What is going on, everybody? This is Jamie Kane with the Channel Unfiltered. As always, today I'm joined by the one and only Tim Hickle. Hickle, right? Right.
That's
Yeah.
me.
Okay, cool. I forgot. I didn't ask how to pronounce your last name, so I got real nervous there as I was saying it.
I will say,
uh,
living in Indianapolis, the number one thing I get is Tim Hinkle. I get Hinkle a lot
mm.
because of Hinkle Fieldhouse, the place where Butler plays basketball.
Okay,
And
gotcha.
there are honestly a lot of worse things I could be associated with. I think if that's the one mistake people are making, I'm a pretty happy
Yeah.
camper.
Okay, so I nailed it though.
There we
Hickle.
go. You
All right,
crushed it.
I got it. First
Yeah.
time. All right, good. Yeah, good. Well, good. Tim, I want obviously you were with Lemhi. Very excited. I know John. John has gotten to be a good friend of mine. I just telling you before we started recording that John is one of the people I look up to most in this space and in the channel. So very excited to see that you're working with him. If you wouldn't mind giving an introduction to who you are and what Lemhi is, and then we'll get into the conversation.
Absolutely. So my name's Tim Hickle. I've been running B2B SaaS marketing teams for 15 years now. So spent a lot of time with early stage startups, early stage scale ups, trying to get them to great exits, trying to get them to great outcomes, and ultimately running go-to-market motions for people who are selling technology. I'm a relative newcomer to the MSP industry. As a matter of fact, John Harden is the guy who dragged me into it when he first talked to me about what he was working on with Lemhi. Came on board as a co-founder here at Lemhi. Absolutely love what we're working on building right now because of the opportunity that exists in this landscape when it comes to helping MSPs fundamentally grow their business. So Lemhi is a AI services management platform for MSPs that's focused on helping them turn the AI demand that already exists inside their book of business into a repeated managed service. We've seen that same problem come up over and over again. MSPs really want to find a way to capitalize on and monetize AI within their book of business, but more often than not, that ends up manifesting as custom project work or quoting just like buckets of hours. We wanted to build a much better mousetrap to help them not only build and deliver and sell, but also be able to sell AI transformation as a service to their clients in a way that can help grow their book of business.
Yeah, I love that, man. Thanks for that. I think before you and I were recording, we were talking about that there's quite a bit of difference between how many MSPs are ready to sell AI services to their clientele, as opposed to how many clientele are requesting that their MSPs sell them services. There's this huge gap between those two things, which is a very interesting. I think it's the one of the first time, and like you and I come from the kind of the same or
Yeah.
similar background, come into the channel with not a ton of historical knowledge, right? And kind of newcomers and kind of owning that outsider. Like I'm good with that because we get to learn with fresh eyes, right? And talking to MSP owners and those sorts of things has been incredible for me, as I'm sure it has been with you, right?
Well, so I agree. Well, so let's dig a little bit deeper into the why there, right? Because like,
Yeah.
why is this so hard to sell? But everyone's asking you for it. One of the phrases that I love about product market fit is you have product market fit when you feel like you're walking through a dog part with a meat suit on, right? If you don't feel like you're walking through a dog part with the meat hanging off of you, then you don't have product market fit yet, right? Well, MSPs, when they walk into their book of business with their clients, they've got dogs nipping at their heels. It looks like it's like they're walking around with a big T-bone steak on their butt, right? It's they people want what they have. People want the help. They want the guidance. They want the expertise. Their clients are asking for it. So why are they struggling to sell it? That juxtaposition is a really hard thing to understand for somebody who is highly technical. But for
Yeah.
somebody like you or I that comes from more of a sales or a go-to-market background, I think it's a lot easier for us to demystify for folks because what as somebody who's a sales leader, what I've learned as somebody who's a marketing leader who has had to learn sales through the years is the single hardest sale to make is one where the price is fixed and the outcome is fuzzy, right? Anytime
Yes.
you're in a situation where
Yep.
it's like, this is the amount that you're going to pay, this is the bucket of scope, this
Yep.
is the fixed cost of the thing. Well, what am I going to get for that? What do I get out of that? What's the benefit? And it's kind of vibes based. Anytime the outcome is vibes based, you're going to have a really hard time selling it, which means the bar
Very true.
to close that sale is really, really, really high. And as I think about AI transformation, when I've seen MSPs firsthand trying to sell this, what I see is I see them trying to sell a product that from a scope perspective is pretty fixed. It's a pretty big scope because they have to do AI readiness. They have to make sure that their SharePoint set up correctly, make sure that all the data is orchestrated in such a way that the intern can't figure out the CEO's salary, right? Like they have to go through and do that work. They have to
Hmm.
go through and do training and implementation with the team and enablement. They want to deploy out AI agents, which means there's going to be some level of custom dev work, right? There's the actual scope of what needs to get done is big. It's this big, chunky project. But when the client asks, like, okay, cool, what is going to be different about my business 90 days from now because we did this? The answer is it's hand wavy because the business
Yes.
owner understands I need to be doing this safely and securely. But when the MSP responds, well, you're not going to have private data going into Chat GPT, they say, okay, well, what's the business value of that for me? Right? I can understand that I shouldn't want that or have that. But if you're
Yeah.
asking for a 5-figure check in exchange for this work, I kind of need to be able to tie it to 5 figures worth of value. And
Yes.
is not having an employee upload something private to ChatGPT, is that worth 5 figures to my business today? I just don't know, right? So what I think, MSPs need to focus on, if they really want to focus on actually turning this into a repeatable line of business that they can sell easily, because you want to put the sale on easy mode. Put the sale on easy mode. Easiest way to put the sale on easy mode is to lead with the value. How can we come prepared to the table with an AI roadmap that shows you this is the specific thing that we're going to deploy for you on this timeline? This is our estimated time savings and our estimated ROI on each one of these use cases. You just need to help us stack rank and prioritize them so we can get them done in the right order. How does that sound?
Yeah.
All of a sudden,
Yeah.
the value is front and center. We're sitting here talking about the value. We're not talking about the cost. And we're making our clients the collaborators here under our guidance instead of the collaborators in front of a blank whiteboard trying to imagine together what AI can do just to come back with a big scope project that they'll never buy.
Yeah, dude, you see so many truth bombs in that. So I'm gonna kind of sift through. One of the things that I agree with 100% of what you said. I want to push back on one thing, which is
Hit
lead with
me.
the value. Okay,
Okay.
so this is just because for my sales background,
Yeah.
right? I'm not saying that you don't lead with the value, but you start with the pain. You start with the fear.
Ooh,
You
that's
figure
yes.
out where the pain, because the value doesn't mean anything unless it's solving a pain, unless it's resolving a fear. Because humans, take it for what it's worth, man. But humans, we operate a lot of the times off of our lizard brain. There's a great book
Yeah.
that talks about this called Pitch Anything by Oren Klaff. It's a great book, and how and very even analytical, what you would deem as logical people are 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10, making decisions with a primitive lizard brain. It's fear
Yeah.
based. How do I avoid pain? Right. And a lot of
Yeah.
times, to your point, they don't really, sometimes they know that pain and it's front and center. Those are the easiest sales to make because if you do
Yep.
have the outcome, then you can supply the value very quickly. You don't have to convince them of the pain. But then there is, if they don't know the pain, then you have to go into what is called the challenger methodology. The Challenger Sales, a great book. I
Yes.
actually just did another episode where I talked about that book and how I think the Challenger methodology matches really well with the MSP sales process. You have to educate them on what the pain is. And now the beautiful thing about that is MSPs for almost their entire existence have had to educate their client base on why these technical problems are incredibly important for their business outcomes, right? And because
Yes.
look, I can tell you as a guy that comes from blue collar entrepreneurs, restaurant owners, automotive shop, like my grandpa and uncle, all these guys, they don't, I'm telling you right now, you go into the technical weeds with them, they're not going to care. You tie it to this is what makes sure that you can take payments every single day. That's a far different conversation. MSPs have done that, like I said, historically, because they've had to explain those things at that ground level to people that just don't understand them, right? So that's the first thing is find the pain, identify the pain, build
Yes.
the value off the pain. The second thing is, as you were talking, is one of my favorite sayings in sales, and I learned this at the very beginning of my career, is a confused mind will always say no. And if you cannot what you're talking about is quantification, right? At the end of the day, if
Yeah.
you cannot quantify for them how it's going to help them monetarily, right? And that's usually the first one, or time savings wise, like you said, it's kind of hand wavy. If they're confused about either pricing, which is a horrible thing to be confused about because you're never going to win that deal, or outcome, those deals are going to be incredibly, incredibly difficult to land. So I just wanted to kind of back up what you were saying with my sales
Yes.
experience, you know? So
I
yeah.
agree with you 100%. Now let me ask you, what do you think the number one pain that that MSPs clients are experiencing? What pains and fears
That's a
do
good
you think they're
question.
experiencing around AI?
I think a lot of people fear that they're missing out. I think a lot of people feel like they're falling behind because that's
Yep.
what the entire world tells them. I don't know if that's actually true, frankly. You know, as an
Yep.
AI native company, I've actually had this exact conversation with John on the second episode ever of the Channel Unfiltered of I think things are moving actually a lot slower than people anticipate, but all the thought leadership and the podcast, event circuits, right? Like all the social media, the news is driving this fear of like, look, AI is moving quickly. There's no doubt about it. But is it moving quickly towards the outcomes that people are saying it's moving towards? I don't think so, right? So I think it's that FOMO, that fear of if I miss the boat, I'm going to be screwed as a business owner. I think, frankly, MSPs are feeling that as well, to answer your
Well,
question.
but this is why I think that there's such a huge opportunity here for MSPs specifically, right? And why I think MSPs are the right partner to own this, because at the end of the day, someone needs to be the mature adult in the room that
Yeah,
actually
absolutely.
understands AI
Absolutely.
at a level that they
Yeah.
can say, calm down. Let's. I'm a basketball fan. I don't know if you're a basketball guy. NBA finals are happening right now. I'm
Yeah.
a big
Yeah.
basketball fan.
I'm a
Something I
Pacers
love.
fan, funny
Oh,
enough. So
brother. All right, you are my types of people. Then, all right. As soon as we
I
get,
have never
I'm
go
actually
ahead, sorry.
hold on. I've got my Hallie ones, my Tyrese Halliburton shoes
There
on
you
right
go.
now. So
There you go.
they're
John knows this. I've never lived in Indiana, but for whatever reason, I'm a massive Colts fan. Like I have a Colts
okay.
flag hanging
Yeah,
above my on my ceiling right now, and I'm a big Pacers fan. So take that for what it's
I
worth. Yeah.
love that. I love it.
Yeah.
But something I love in basketball is, the other team goes on a run, right? They score 8 points
Mhm.
in a row, and the point guard bringing the ball up. Settle down, everyone. Settle down. Settle down. We're fine.
Yes.
We've got this, right? Like
Yes. Yeah.
somebody's got to calm. Somebody's got to calm the team down. Somebody's got to calm the team down. This is okay. Things might feel like they're getting out of control, but we are in control. This is fine, right? Someone needs to be the partner that does that. Someone needs to do that right now for millions of
Very true.
businesses, right? Like
Very true.
somebody's got to be the person that does it. It's not going to be the AI consultants. I can tell you that right now. Because the AI consultants are coming in making you feel that FOMO, making you feel that you're not doing enough. Like that's a big part of the way that they're being successful. A big part of the reason why a lot of AI consultants that know nothing about cybersecurity are able to come in and start to swoop into that book of business is specifically because they're driving that fear, right? As an MSP, especially with like existing clients that you're working with, you have the opportunity to be the person that actually is the calming influence by saying, listen, there are two ways we can do this, right? I understand that you're scared. I understand that you're worried. I understand that you want to take action. I hear that. Let me tell you two stories of companies that do this. Some companies say we need to be making progress because we're really afraid we're being left behind. We feel like we're not making enough progress in AI. We feel like we need to take some action here. And what they do is they try a new tool every 2 weeks. They are adopting, 20 different AI solutions across a bunch of different departments. They've got every single VP going out and building their own AI projects. People are vibe coding things on the side to try to solve problems internally. Everyone's
Yeah.
spinning their wheels 100 miles an hour trying to make progress on this, and you're getting nowhere. And that's what we see in the vast majority of companies
Mm.
who are trying to catch up on the AI side. Is it's a lot of activity, but it's not really grounded in meaningful outcomes. Now, the other way we could do this, and this is the way that we recommend as your MSP, because at the end of the day, we're the ones that are experts in technological change for your business. Like that's what we do.
Mm.
What we would recommend is let's ground this in the real value that you can be seeing from AI in your business. Let's identify the best use cases for you. Let's give you an actionable roadmap that we can work against. And then let's give you specific timelines and estimates for what the outcomes are going to look like, and then measure ourselves against those. So in scenario
Yeah.
A,
You're talking about a mutual action plan, a mutual success
yes,
plan.
yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
well said. Yeah,
Yeah.
in option number A over here, option A, you feel like you're doing a lot because you're deploying 20 things, but nothing gets implemented at a structural level. And ultimately, you end up making no progress. Whereas over here, you might only implement one or two things at a time. You might feel like you're taking it a lot slower, but what happens is those things build and compound on each other. And so you do this for 6 months, and maybe you find one or two use cases that work. You do this for 6 months, and you've deployed 12 or 15 use cases that actually work,
Mhm.
right? And I know when you lay it out like that, most business owners are going to look at that and say, this is a no brainer, right?
Yes.
This is the bucket I need to be living in because this is what's going to actually drive my business forward towards real outcomes. And this is just me making other people anxious because I feel anxious, right? But I think the challenge is most of these business owners, they don't have that point guard who's coming to the table and calming them down and saying, it's okay, we've got this together because you have a partner here that actually knows what they're looking at and doing.
Yeah, yeah, dude, we're yeah, 100% in line with all that stuff, dude. That's one of the things that we've implemented at my company is mutual action plans because as an AI native company, going driving towards a very specific outcome, right? It's like you're
Yeah.
not gonna. One of the things that we see a lot of is MSPs coming to us, and it's understandable. And a lot of them are in exploratory mode, and they feel very strongly that they want to adopt AI. They want to put AI in place. So I think one thing we haven't talked about yet is that I think AI, like when cybersecurity became a thing, it was MSPs educating their customers on cybersecurity. When cloud became a thing, it was MSPs educating their customers on cloud. For the first time ever, I think AI is their clients bringing AI to the MSPs. I'm not saying educating them, but asking them about it and not having to be educated or not. They should be educated, but they're bringing it to their doorstep and saying, "Hey, I do want to be educated on this. You're my technical person. You're the smart guy that I hired. Teach me how to about it and teach me how to implement it or implement it for me." Right? That's the first
Yep.
time in history I think that we're seeing that. I don't know your thoughts
You
on
are
that, but
so you are 100% right, but it's also challenging because we need to disambiguate here what we're talking about when we talk about the client, right? Because with
fair, fair.
MSPs, so the client is not a monolith. The client is not one person. The client is a
Yeah,
company that's filled with people, right?
very true. Yep.
And let's think about the lived experience of the CEO of a small or medium-sized business, right? What that CEO is experiencing, who oftentimes is going to be the point person that the MSP is working with, sometimes the CEO, sometimes it's going to be somebody else in the company, but it's like you've got the executive leadership team that you directly interface with. And from the MSP's perspective, they think about the client that way, right? Because that's
Yeah,
the person they are most often interfacing with that they would consider the owner of the account. But the company, that executive is almost never the person that's like championing AI
correct.
internally.
Yeah, that's not what we've
You
seen like ever.
usually
Very, very few.
usually
Yeah,
what it is no, it's a bunch of employees, maybe some managers, but a lot of times it's frontline employees that have been using these tools. Some of them have like done it officially and gone through sanctioned,
shadow AI.
pathways. Some of them have gone completely rogue and the company doesn't even know they're
Yeah,
doing it, right? But it's usually starting bottom up, not top down, which also makes this different from most technological change because like no, in addition to, it wasn't just that like, yeah, as an MSP, your client wasn't coming to you asking you about cybersecurity. You had to educate them. But also, no small business has ever had an intern come up to them and be like, hey, have you thought about doing this for cybersecurity? Like, that's never happened, right? But
yeah.
every small business right now has some 22-year-old straight out of college that's like, hey, so have we thought about using ChatGPT for this? Like, have we thought about that? Because I use ChatGPT. That's the only way I got my degree. It's it
Yeah,
and
hopefully it's
so
not a doctor.
that's that's a whole nother like category of problem, right? And so
Yeah,
one of the things that we've seen be a huge unlock for MSPs is skip the executive and come back to them later, right? So what we do with our clients is through the Lemhi platform, we just let you deploy a survey to everyone in their tenant. We help you just deploy a survey to every employee that they want involved in the process. And we could say, hey, we're going to go collect as much information as we can from your frontline employees on your behalf for you, right? As the CEO, you don't have to go and sit here and figure out what everybody in your company is doing. Because a lot of the MSPs we talk to, they'd say, well, when I sit down with the CEO and say, what are people using right now? A lot of times they don't even
they don't
know.
know.
They,
They have
they
no
don't even,
idea.
it's and then we say, okay, well, here, we'll give you like a draft boilerplate acceptable use policy and let you run with that. And if you can go like ask your employees what they use. You can plug it in, and we can, it all of a sudden it's like you just gave the CEO homework. Well, yeah, of course the CEO isn't happy about that outcome, right? You delivered no
Yeah.
value and you delivered homework. That's a bad outcome. Reverse that. Say, no, here's what we're going to do on your behalf. We're going to go and just send out this survey link. We're going to ask your employees, what AI tools are they using? How are they using them? We're going to show them a bunch of out of the box AI agents that literally already exist in Copilot that you can customize and deploy for them like this. Like, you don't need super specialized AI text to do that. We're going to get a bunch of that information from your employees, and then we're going to summarize, synthesize all of that, and bring it back to you as an action plan and a project plan, right? That way, when we're coming to the table with the CEO, we're not sitting here trying to Imagineer together. We're coming and saying, we went directly to the source, directly to the people who are actually already using AI in your business. And we use their input to craft a roadmap that works for both of us.
Let me ask you. I want to ask you a
Hit
question
me.
because this is something
Yeah.
that I've heard a ton of, and this is MSP specific, but I'm almost positive it's going to apply to the MSP client with their employees. Is that
Yeah.
the problem? We hear I'm having a really hard time getting my, and this is an age old problem for any software tool, etc. It's not just an AI problem. We're having a problem getting our people to adopt the tooling, right? Like
Yeah.
that's what we hear from MSPs and they're when they deploy it to their clients, right? It's just like because it's not to your point, it's not starting at that grassroots level moving up. The problem is like you don't have a problem. You don't have a problem with your people adopting AI. They've already done that. You have a problem with people
Yes.
adopting the AI tooling that you want them to adopt, right? What have
Yes.
you guys seen in that realm about obviously starting at the grassroots level? Because it's funny, that's something that we try to do as well, right? We talk about it's
Yep.
when the owner says use this tool and the technician, at least for us or the end user for you guys, the client's employee goes, man, the boss has asked me to try 14 different tools the last 3 years and they're never helpful for me and they just waste time and he's just excited about it. That's much different when the employee or the technician goes to the owner and says, hey, I've been using this tool and it's killing. I think we need to make this an integral part of our operation. Much different conversation. But
Yes.
how do you guys, I don't say you guys, but what are you guys seeing
Yeah.
in the adoption realm, right? In that question, how that
Yeah.
struggle?
So one big thing, and again, I'm going to keep using the phrase monolith over and over again because this is the
It's
number
all
one
good.
problem I keep seeing. This is the number one problem I keep seeing. Is this is another area where I see people treating it as a monolith, and I've actually led a good number of AI workshops for small and medium-sized businesses, and I can tell you, as the person leading the workshop, the number one challenge that I experience is if I go into a room of 10 people and I try to teach them how to deploy and use AI in their business or in their jobs, that is a very, very, very hard job because in that group of 10, I probably have one or two people over on this end of the spectrum who like are already building their own N8N workflows, and they've got Copilot, working on something, and they're, using Claude Cowork for a specific use case. And they're thinking about using Claudebot. Have you used Claudebot? It's like, and you've got some folks all the way over on this end of the spectrum. And then I also have folks all the way over on this end of the spectrum who have done nothing except for free chat GPT a couple times. And they said, well, I used free chat GPT and it was bad. So I don't think this is going to help me. Right. And I had to somehow speak to both of these audiences. And that is almost impossible to do because anything that will provide value to one audience will, by definition, not provide value to the other. Right. So one of the things that I always encourage people to do is, first thing is, as you're establishing this baseline, you need to get some sense of every single user within the team. Where are they at right now and what do they need to understand, right? Don't come in and offer like, oh, we're going to do an AI enablement workshop for everyone in the company to attend. That's going to be a one-time workshop where we're going to cover how to prompt Copilot. There are members of your team that will need that, right? There are absolutely members of your team that need that. How do we identify those people and send custom communications to them that says, hey, we have this custom AI prompting workshop that we'd love for you to attend because I think it would be valuable. Meanwhile, we've got some more exciting stuff upstream for some folks who are more advanced, and they're going to get invited to something different, right? So one is, if you're going to be doing any training or enablement as like actual workshop programming, bifurcating those audiences is really, really important. But then one of the things that we're also focused on from a technical implementation with Lemhi is how do we drip micro learnings that are tailored to your specific use cases? Because I'm a marketing guy. I work with a lot of salespeople. I work with a lot of product people. I work with a lot of engineers. None of us had the same AI use cases, even if all of us are using the same AI tools every single day, right? We might use a lot of the same tooling. Our use cases are really different. The value that we're getting out of it is really different. So what we're working on right now is persona based micro learnings, where it's like, hey, can I every single week be getting a few 90-second videos dripped to me directly in product or via email, where I can actually see, hey, here's a quick tip for a content marketer to cut the amount of time it takes for them to write a LinkedIn post, right? Okay, awesome. That's hyper relevant to me. But if you gave that same, generic, if you gave that same advice to my engineering team, they'd say, what the hell are you giving me this for? And if you gave both of us generic, like, here's how to prompt Copilot better, both of us are going to look at that and say there's no value in here at all. So I think that the more segmented we can get with the way we train and enable people, the more effective we're going to be. I think that's a huge piece of this.
I think that leads into another, one of the things, because when you're in this space and you're doing what we're doing, which is having young companies and at the, I don't want to say at the forefront, right? I feel like we're at the forefront of AI. It's been around since 2022, or at least ChatGPT, and that's when everybody really thinks that's when AI started, was in 2022 with ChatGPT. That's fine if they think that. That's, we that's
Right.
a different conversation for a different day, but obviously, like, we're still pretty early in this, and by 2026, right? And one of the things that I think AI has exposed, especially for SaaS vendors, is the need for highly customized solutions. Because one of the things that you said earlier was, you come in there and everybody could be using Claude, for instance. Claude is my LM choice, right? And everybody could be using Claude. And the beautiful thing about Claude is they can create their own projects, their own skills, they have their own use cases, right? It's the same tool, but it has the ability to be highly customized to what's important to you, right? Traditionally, SaaS, one of the reasons SaaS has been successful in general is that it typically would service a very specific use case, but generally enough to where it can be applied to a wide audience, right? With AI, you're seeing there being more demand for customization from the, clients to SaaS specifically. And I use SaaS as an example because obviously we're both in it,
Yeah.
right? Um, excuse me, with that being said, I think the same problem, I don't know this for sure, but I'd be interested to hear y'all's data. I think that same problem is probably existing with MSP vendors as well, of deploying solutions. And one of the things about one of the problems that's arising is that it's, and the reason the build versus buy debate has become so huge and vibe coding has become massive is, well, I can just, you're telling me that you can't do it, but I can. Now, there's a huge difference between building and maintaining. And then a lot of people always forget SaaS as a service. They forget that last S is not just the software, but the service that comes along with that if the company does it well. So I guess to encapsulate all of that, my question is what are you guys seeing about end users, the MSPs, clients, employees, and the need for, or at least the seeming requirement for customization, and how you either lean into that or work around that?
So I definitely think we are seeing customization become more and more important and I think that the build versus buy conversation, my personal belief is that's going to be a very short-lived window where
I a
build versus buy.
thousand percent agree,
Because
dude.
because
I
I think
I was
there are a
just
lot of
saying the
people.
other, dude. Sorry, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I always talk about, I forget, I need to go find the original meme where I stole this from, but somebody talked about how, like, in the future the two most important jobs in the world are going to be slop cannons and slop janitors, right? It's like literally, like, the two most important jobs in any company is the slop cannon, and the slop cannon just, like, pumps out AI
Blowing,
slop
yeah,
all day, right? And then you have the slop janitor who comes in and cleans up the slop from the slop cannon, right? And I
yeah,
think there are a lot of people that are going to slop cannon together their own set. Oh no, I can build my. I'm going to vibe code my own CRM. Why would I not? It's like,
yeah.
well, call me in 6 months and I will explain why not. right?
I got to
Because
tell
you're
you
not,
this,
yeah,
man. Real fast, before you go, because I want you to answer my question. I was
yeah,
literally just having a conversation with my co-founder last week. I literally said, dude, you're in 6 months, you're going to see all the people flooding back to,
yep,
hey, I want the service. I want the software. I want, because they're going to see all the problems that come with building, maintaining it. Not like there's just so many, like, as somebody that has built a SaaS company, and I'm non-technical, but obviously I'm co-founder, CEO
yeah.
of our company, right? So seeing all of it, it is, man. And it having built in our own internal solutions to revive code and help us here, there, and
Yeah.
some edge use cases, right? Like, it's funny. I just love that you said 6 months, because that's literally what I said. In six
That's
months, people are going to come back, and they'll come back to MSPs as well. Hey, I remember
well,
you
yeah.
talked to me about this thing. It's not working for us. They're MSPs, to you guys that are listening. They're going to come back to you and say, yeah, it just fell apart, right?
Well, and I think what's going to happen, I actually I'm more bullish than most people I know in small SaaS in the future. Like
Like
I
micro
believe,
SaaS.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I would say a little bit, a touch bigger than like full on micro. Like there are a lot of people where it's like, oh no, it's a one person micro SaaS company, but it's like I think that there was a lot of fear a couple of years back that we are entering this great compression in SaaS where everything is just going to be Salesforce. It's like, okay, well, Salesforce and Workday are the only two SaaS companies now, and that's everything else gets acquired or zipped up into them, and there is no other SaaS company, right? I actually think what's going to end up happening is we're going to have a giant proliferation of SaaS companies because people are going to say, no, I want something that is hyper specific by my vertical and by my size and by my specific sub region as well, because there are a few things that so I think highly opinionated SaaS is really the way of the future. The way of the future is
Yeah.
highly opinionated SaaS. But I have a question for you actually around the
Uh-oh. Hey, this is my
uh,
show.
I have a question for you around the no
Yeah.
around the customization side. So here's one of the
Sure.
things I've been obsessed with AI and AI and learning specifically that I'm curious how
Mhm.
you've thought about is one of the things I find vexing about training people on AI is right now, humans are still the intermediary for the vast majority of it. Right now,
Mhm.
you and you use AI all day, every day. I use AI all day, every day. There is no easy way. If you have a really good AI use case, there's no really easy way for that to just zap into my instance, my use case. Like I can't steal
Yeah.
your context window, right? And
Correct.
that is
Yes.
a problem that somebody's going to figure out how to solve. Of like, all right, when Jamie finds a really killer cracked use case, how can we share it with the entire rest of the company in a way that they can then see, oh, this is what Jamie's doing, right? The fact that everyone is playing on single player mode with AI is a huge problem. And once AI multiplayer mode really starts to take off, I think that that's going to be a huge catalyst for what the
I
future
agree.
looks like. I just don't have a vision for it yet.
Yeah, I don't know. I know I can say one, and I try not to talk about our company a lot during the show because I
Yeah,
don't want it to sound like I'm pitching HelpGhost, right? But like that specific problem is something that we are trying to solve for MSPs specifically, right? Because
yeah,
you have all this knowledge locked into one person's head, and that unfortunately, if they walk out the door, so does that 4 or 5 years of experience walk out with them. And there's bits and pieces, there's breadcrumbs of what they had, there's documentation, there may be chats, DMs, phone transcripts, etc. But like it's not complete, number one, right? And number two, you don't, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to the context of which that knowledge was dispersed, right? And so that's question I once again now for the world in general as we adopt AI solutions, and for MSPs speaking to their clients, that's a problem that's going to need to be solved. I think the difficult part with that is funny enough, we're talking about customization and edge use cases and specifics, is that every single one of those companies has their own I don't say way of doing things, because it's not like they're choosing to do it, but it's like this natural evolution of how knowledge is dispersed and captured within their organization that varies from organization to organization to organization. And what you were talking about earlier, of the individual has their own world that they're living in within that business, because it's not a monolith. It's a company with 5, 10, 100, 1,000 employees that are all doing things separately. well, how do you meet each of that person at their level? That's a really
Yeah.
hard and difficult question to answer. That once I said we're trying to figure that out for MSPs, but like I guess if I was to distill that down about what we should be doing is meeting people where they are at their
Yeah.
level and how they operate. How you functionally do that is I don't know. Like that is a really good question to be asking and trying to figure out. So sorry, I don't. That probably wasn't a great answer,
No,
but that's how
no,
I
that
think
was
about it.
well, it
So
sounds like if that's a problem that you're interested in, you should talk to HelpGhost. Like that's what it sounds like. So you don't
if
pitch
you're
your
an
product, I'll
MSP,
pitch it.
yeah,
Yeah, you don't pitch your
exactly.
product, I'll pitch your product for you. It's fine.
Thank you, brother. Yeah. But how do you, so I want to go back though to like
Yeah,
my original question with
yeah,
you is that build versus buy. Obviously, you've talked about this or
right.
at least thought about it
Yeah,
quite a
yeah,
bit yourself. We 100% in agreement that I absolutely believe this is a short term debate, right? But
right.
going towards what it's producing of need of customization for individuals, how do you guys what are you guys seeing, I guess, and how are you trying to help MSPs meet people where they are to continue that conversation?
Well, if I can speak sort of abstractly around that, what I would
Yeah,
say
sure.
is, yeah. What I would say
I'm
is,
not asking how like
yeah,
Lemhi, right?
for
It's
sure,
just,
for
but
sure.
your
Well,
thoughts on this,
the way I'm thinking about the process is how can you, and this isn't going to be possible for every single person, but how can you broadly standardize processes and customize content and outputs, right? I think that's the sort of broad picture view as to where we're going. Is we used to live in a world where both of these things, the production process was similar, right? We now live in a world where the production process of this is way easier, and the production process of this is still highly manual, right? And so one of the things I think a lot about is I think we're going to go through a large amount of workflow changes, and how do we think about workflow changes? I think that when it comes to hyper specificity, one of the things we're seeing right now as we're building the platform and working through it is the simple needs of like, all right, MSPs work with a lot of law offices, and law offices are going to have the same needs, the same use cases, the same problems, the same challenges, a lot of the same edge cases. And that means that we can shade this in a very specific direction. Is there a way where we can build a law firm specific workflow that is baked into our process and our way of doing things so we can get them on that golden path? I think like in software development, people talk about golden paths all the time, right? And I
hmm
think that what in the previous world, the way that I used to think about SaaS when I was running marketing for SaaS companies in the pre-AI era, we would talk about we have 1 to 3 golden paths in our product. We have this golden path that we want people to go down. We want them to do these things in this order because when they do these things, they're going to get value. And that value is ultimately what retains them and keeps them happy. Where I think we are going is a world where we're going to have 1,000 golden paths within our product. And that's going to be a bear to maintain. But if we think
Yes.
about that not through, if we think about that through like a river system or like a mermaid chart, right? I think a
Mhm.
lot of the magic is how few bars can you keep at the top of that chart, right? Because if you can live in a world where it's like, all right, our golden paths are all based off these 3 foundational pieces, and then this customizes 10 times, this customizes 10 times, this customizes 10 times, and then there's branches underneath those. I feel like the maintenance of it becomes a lot more manageable than we functionally have 50 different
Yeah.
workflows that we need to manage and maintain.
Yeah. I think it made me think of choose your own adventure. But
Yeah.
you foundationally start at the same place, right? You
Yes.
foundationally are beginning from point A, and then you have infinite number of pace of possibilities. Like if anybody's ever played the which I'm sure everybody, the RPG, right? Like Skyrim and all this, the open world, right? Like there's so many possibilities that you can go down, but you start functioning from the exact same point. So I think that's a really wise take is and for MSPs listening, just to kind of like summarize that again, is you define the starting paths, whether that's 1, 2, 7, right? You can maintain a couple of clearly defined ones, and then letting them choose their own adventure from there and supporting that. Once again, functionally, how do you do that? That's the question to be answered. But I think having that in ideation and as your starting point, because frankly, a lot of people don't know where to start today. They don't know how
Yeah.
to begin, right? And so Well, I got one more question for you because I know we're a little bit over on time here.
Hit me.
Um, This is one that I actually wrote down before I started recording. So I just wanted to, this is one of the scripted questions. And I don't think I've asked one scripted question today. So it's a good opportunity. You guys clearly have a thesis that the MSP category is evolving into the managed intelligence provider, right? How real is that transition right now? And how are leading MSPs doing that? Or is it still mostly theoretical and a few years away?
That's a great question. I think that we're in the first batter of the first inning. I do think it's real. I think what we are seeing right now is really forward thinking MSPs are already building this practice and they're already trying to sell this practice, and they have a line out their door of customers who are interested, right? That doesn't mean that every MSP who's building this practice is selling it effectively and actually being able to close those customers waiting out the door. That doesn't mean that every single one of those programs is built in a way that they can actually deliver against it as a managed service instead of a 90-day project that they're going to have to resell over and over and over again, right? So I do think it's still evolving. There's a lot of, I think 2 years from now, we will be in the mode of this is fully arrived and this is a standard line of business that every single MSP is at least considering as a line of revenue for them. But we are still in the really, really early innings today. But we are seeing right now there is real motion happening here. MSPs are actually building this as a service offering. They are actually selling it, and customers are ready to buy. They are ready to back up the Brinks truck. The problem is a lot of customers are not seeing the end value yet because it's not packaged and positioned in a way that shows the value that they actually can deliver against.
Is that quantified yet? Yeah, that was one of the things that we started with, right? Is a quantification of the outcome. That's one of the things. I mean, the description of the channel unfiltered, the show is speaking about how emerging technologies within the MSP channel are affecting business outcomes, right? Like that
Yes.
is really the purpose of the show. And to your point, it's one of those things that I have noticed in having many, many, many conversations over the last year of, both publicly and privately of just the the mystery around outcome. Like, what are
Yeah.
we actually trying to achieve here? Like, what are we trying? Like, what is the dream? If you could, I always ask, not always, but a lot of times in my previous career, and sometimes when I do demos still today, of hey, if you could wave the magic wand,
Yeah.
what would be the dream outcome? What are you pursuing, right? And that obviously helps, you as a sales professional understand what they're trying to drive towards, and hopefully you can help them achieve that outcome. For a lot of MSPs, I think your clients are coming to you and they're excited about AI and they have a vague idea of what they want to do about it, hopefully, but a lot of times they don't know that outcome. And so I
Yeah.
think specifying that outcome with them, hey, what is the dream outcome? What are you trying to achieve? If we do this for you, not what does it look like, what and not how does it function, right? But what are you getting? What is the ROI because we have done this thing? That's where the conversation has to start, right? And then you work backwards from there, in my humble opinion, right? Take that for what
I
it's
agree.
worth.
No, I think you're 100% right. That's exactly what we're focused on building. I mean, really, the phrase we've used a lot is what we want to create is color by numbers for selling AI as a managed service, right? Because at
Mm,
the end of the day, this shouldn't be the purview of one or two members of your team if you're an MSP. And a lot of MSPs we talk to say like, "Oh no, I've got one really crack salesperson, or like two people who are like really, really good at talking about AI with clients." But like, I can't just have every account manager or every VICO that we've got that is working with us. Not
yeah.
everyone is capable of doing this. Well, I believe that the future is no, they need color by number. They need here is exactly how to present this value. Here's exactly how to sell this value. Here's exactly how to move this engagement forward. Because once you're able to do that, and once every other member of your team is able to do that, bring it up naturally in their QBRs with your existing client base. One of the things I'm a very passionate believer in is if we can just help every MSP we work with grow 25% year over year, we will have done our job, right? Because we
Mm.
for so many
That'd be
MSPs,
revolutionary, man.
yeah, their growth rate is stuck. It's stuck at 0 or 5% or 10% if they're lucky, right? And I look at this and say, there's no reason why we can't build this into a service that can help them grow 20% next year. And if we can help enough people grow 20% year over year in this industry, I think that, it would be transformative, not just for those MSPs, not just for their clients, but really for the relationship between those two entities as well, and that transition into that managed intelligence provider.
Yeah, I in a world where look, I always like to say I'm white collar with blue collar soul because that's how I grew up, man. I my dad was a Marine, he was an entrepreneur, but blue collar entrepreneur. All my family were blue collar or service or hospitality entrepreneurs, right? Like I don't care what anybody says, restaurants or if not the one of the most difficult businesses in the world to run, right? And I grew up around that, right? And including automotive and stuff I mentioned in the beginning of the show, right? But one of the things the reason I bring that up is because we see a huge detriment of trade based talent right now. It's
Yeah.
just not out there, right, for whatever
Yeah.
reason. And I think in a world where technical talent has never been more needed, there's also a huge disparity between the need for technical talent and those that are available to provide that talent, right? You see, that's one of the hardest. MSPs said all the time. One of the hardest things to do is hire the required
Yeah.
talent it is to succeed, right? And so, just speaking, the whole reason I bring it up is what you're talking about is increasing year over year. I just think there's a huge opportunity for MSPs to do that if they can figure out these other things that are really hard problems to figure out. I'm not minimizing that. I just think the opportunity on the other side of those challenges, as I think many of you realize that are listening, is absolutely massive for you guys. So I do have one more question. I promise to let you go after this one. So BCG says that 70% of AI success is people and change management, but only 10% is technology. But MSPs built their entire business around technology delivery. What actually changes about how MSPs have to operate to be good at the people and change management?
Well, I think this goes back to a lot of the customization and personalization stuff we talked about earlier. That's that hard nut to crack, right? Because if you
Yes.
can actually, the end user deployment here, the ability to actually get every member of your clients to adopt and use this is the limiting factor here. But so much of this comes down to how can we, I think, a big piece of it is drip the right information to you at the right time. As a marketer, that's something that like has been my purview
Mm,
for years, is right message to the right person at the right time, right? If we can deliver that, I think that becomes a hugely impactful piece of this. But then I think another big piece of this is executive change management. Executive ownership is where we see the biggest difference. So one of the things, I don't have the data point off the top of my head, but one of the things that we've seen is there is something like 2 or 3x higher adoption in AI deployments where someone in the C-suite is the champion versus if it's a director or a VP. Literally, just having a C in your title and being the person who owns and is championing the change, that 2 to 3x improves the amount of adoption that you're going to see downstream. That's a huge impact, and a lot of that comes down to the demystification of how is this driving my business forward, right? What business outcomes am I going to achieve? So much of this just comes back to this isn't AI
mm,
for the sake of AI. Because if you're selling AI for the sake of AI, you're always just going to be selling licenses and seats. If
yep.
instead you're focused on, I'm selling AI transformation, I'm selling this roadmap, I'm selling this plan, and that's tied to value, that's tied to hours saved, that's tied to dollars saved, that's tied to revenue opportunities. If I can tie it to those outcomes, getting the C suite to then say, we need to champion this becomes a lot easier. And once you get the C suite to champion, adoption goes up.
Mm. Yeah. All right, brother. Tim, been a great conversation. I appreciate your time, dude. Hopefully you enjoyed this as well. Yeah, I just very impressed with you and your knowledge and coming from outside the channel as have I. You've been drinking from the fire hose, I can tell, man. There's no doubt about it. So I really appreciate the conversation, man. Where can people find you, find Lemhi, and then yeah, we'll end the show.
Absolutely. So easiest place to find both of us, both myself and Lemhi, is LinkedIn. I'd also encourage every MSP listening out there, if this sounds interesting to you, if you want to learn about what we're working on, go follow our field notes. So the website is lemhi, lemhi.com. Lemhi.com. Right there, you can sign up to join our wait list. But the number one piece of thing, number one advice I'd have, number one recommendation is every single week, we're publishing our field notes, just advice from things that we're seeing in real MSPs that are actually deploying AI right now. Go sign up for our field
Mm.
notes so you can stay in the loop in what we're learning and what we're seeing is we're actually out there on the frontier trying to forge the trail. Because even if you're not ready to think about this as a line of business for your MSP today, this is going to be something in the next 2 years you're going to want to consider. And the further of a lead we can help give you by you stealing our notes, the better off you're going to be when you are ready to pull the trigger and actually build AI transformation as a line of service.
Where does the name Lemhi come from, by the way?
That's a great question. So Lemhi, it comes from Lemhi Pass, which is a mountain range out in Idaho. It is inspired by Lewis and Clark when they went out on their trip westward. They were looking for a waterway, a water passage that could take them from the Continental Divide to the Pacific Ocean. And what Thomas Jefferson told them when they originally set out on their journey is you're going to get out to Idaho, what is now called Idaho. You're going to get up to the top of this mountain range. When you get to the top of this mountain range, which is kind of the end of what we as, as immigrants have discovered so far, when you reach this mountain range, what's going to happen is you're going to see this giant river. And this giant river, you're just going to pop a canoe down in. It's just going to take you to the Pacific Ocean. And what happened when they actually reached Lemhi Pass is they looked over this edge. They were the first European settlers to ever look over this ledge, and they see the Rocky Mountains. And they realized the maps that they had, the maps they had been given, were wrong. They weren't reflective of reality. And they had to change. They could not, this was not a boat trip they were on, this was a mountaineering expedition. And so they had to change their approach. And they were forced with a choice of do we keep going and forge ahead, or do we turn back? And they chose to forge ahead. They found the Pacific Ocean. Our belief is right now, AI has brought MSPs to that exact moment. They brought them to this moment where the way that they've packaged and sold everything and done everything for their entire existence, the last 30 years of MSP land, it's fundamentally been changed by AI. The maps do not match the terrain anymore. And we're out here in the wilderness trying to figure out what to do about that. Our belief is that the only choice we have is to forge ahead to find the Pacific Ocean, and that's what inspired the name. So,
Yeah, I love that, dude. I'm based out of Idaho, so I should have known that. Yeah,
oh,
that's
that's amazing. Okay, all right, awesome. Well,
yeah,
if you
yeah,
ever make it out there for a hiking trip, send me a selfie, okay?
yeah. I got you, brother. Yeah, for sure. Well, everybody, thanks for listening to Channel Unfiltered. Hopefully, you enjoyed this conversation between Tim and I. Go check out Lemhi, and as always, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thank y'all.
Thanks so much, Jamie.